My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 48 years old. And this is the story I never wanted to tell. It started with a trip I almost didn't take. I run a small logistics company out of Chicago. Most of my work keeps me in town, in the warehouse, boots on the ground with my guys. But back in late October last year, a longtime client asked me to fly out to Seattle to negotiate a new contract. It was supposed to be good news. It was the kind of meeting that could secure steady work for my company for the next 5 years. Only thing was, I hadn't been away from home for more than 2 nights in over a decade. I'm the kind of man who sleeps better in his own bed, in his own house. The kind who still checks the locks before going upstairs. My wife Claire teased me about it when I told her. She laughed, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't worry, I'll hold down the fort." She said it like it was nothing. I believed her. We'd been married 22 years. We'd been through lean years and good ones. We'd buried her mother together. We'd paid off the mortgage together. We'd raised my little brother together, or at least she'd helped when he came to live with us after our parents passed. Ethan, he was 14 when I took him in. Now he was 31, still finding his way, still between jobs, still living with us. I'd been patient, family's family, and I thought giving him a roof was the right thing to do. Looking back, I see how stupid that was. The trip was set for 4 days. I kissed Claire goodbye in the driveway, clapped Ethan on the shoulder, told him to look after your sister-in-law, and I left. Seattle was cold and wet, but the meetings went well. I called Claire every night before bed, and every night she sounded a little distracted. She said she was just tired. I didn't think much of it. On the last day, my flight got delayed, then rerouted. I didn't make it home until after midnight. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I remember thinking it was strange. Claire always left the porch light on for me. When I unlocked the front door, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not bad, exactly. But not our home's smell. Something heavy. Musk and perfume and wine. I walked into the living room. Half-empty bottle of Merlot sat on the coffee table. 2 glasses. Upstairs, the door to our bedroom was closed. And I swear, I heard it. A low, muffled laugh. Hers. I froze at the foot of the stairs. My hand was on the banister, and in that moment I could have stormed in. I could have kicked the door open, yelled, made it messy. But something in me went still, instead. Not calm, not numb, just still. I turned around, walked back down the stairs and left. I drove around for an hour. My phone lit up twice with Claire's name. I didn't answer. When I finally came home again, the glasses were gone. The bottle was gone. The hallway smelled faintly of air freshener. Claire was asleep. Ethan's door was closed. I didn't say a word. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for 3 weeks. Because if what I suspected was true, I wasn't going to waste it on a screaming match. I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, it destroyed them both. And I knew exactly when I was going to do it. Thanksgiving. The thing about betrayal is, once you suspect it, every little thing becomes evidence. I didn't confront Claire, didn't look at Ethan any differently. At least, not in a way they could notice. But I started watching. Claire's phone used to live on the kitchen counter when she cooked. Now it never left her pocket. Ethan started showering in the mornings instead of at night. And sometimes when I came home early from the warehouse, I'd hear them in the kitchen talking in low voices, the kind that stop when you walk in. I kept my face blank. I acted like I didn't hear. But inside, I was memorizing. The first piece of real proof came by accident. I was cleaning out the garage when I found a scarf tucked behind the passenger seat of Claire's SUV. Not hers. I knew every stitch of clothing she owned. This one smelled faintly of Ethan's cologne. I put it back exactly where I found it. I wasn't ready to take it yet. The second came from habit. I've always kept a small security camera in the backyard, mostly to catch raccoons knocking over the trash cans. One night I checked the footage. Nothing shocking. Just Ethan and Claire sitting on the back porch at midnight, talking close. Too close. His hand was on her knee. She didn't move it. That's when the plan began to take shape. Thanksgiving at our house had always been my thing. Ever since my parents died, I'd been the one to host my aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, even Ethan's old friends. It was loud, messy, and I loved it. This year I decided it was going to be different. Not in size. In spectacle. If I was going to expose them, it had to be in a way no one could deny, no one could twist, and it had to be at a moment where the shock would land hardest. That meant catching them in their own lies in front of people who mattered. 3 weeks out, I made a quiet change to my work schedule. Told Claire the Seattle client wanted a follow-up visit, the Monday before Thanksgiving. Told her I'd be gone 3 days. In reality, I booked a room at a motel 2 towns over. Cheap, anonymous, paid in cash. Then I set up 2 small cameras in the house, one in the kitchen, angled just right to catch the hallway, and one hidden inside the lamp in our bedroom. I don't know if you've ever hidden a camera in your own home, but it's a special kind of sickness you feel. Unscrewing a lamp you've had for 15 years, sliding a lens inside and putting it back like nothing happened. I hated it, but I hated the alternative more. The Monday I left for Seattle, I kissed Claire goodbye at the door, tossed my overnight bag in the truck, and drove off like always. But instead of hitting the highway, I circled back an hour later and parked 3 streets away. I sat in that motel room staring at my phone, refreshing the camera feed every hour. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong. Then came Wednesday night. 8:47 p.m. Ethan walked into our bedroom. Claire was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed. She smiled at him like a woman who didn't have a husband. They talked, laughed, and then it happened. The kind of proof no lawyer, no friend, no family member could argue against. I sat there in the dark motel room watching my wife of 22 years kiss my little brother like it was the most natural thing in the world. Something in me went cold. Not broken, cold. I saved the footage. 2 copies. One on a flash drive. One on a secure cloud account. And that's when the final layer of my plan snapped into place. Thanksgiving dinner was going to be unforgettable. The hardest part wasn't seeing the footage. It was acting like I hadn't. Every morning I drank coffee across from Claire like nothing had changed. Every evening I asked Ethan if he'd found work yet. I even made small talk about football. Inside, I was counting down the days. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I started the real work. First, the guest list. I made sure every important person in both our lives was coming. Claire's sister, her best friend from college, my Aunt Ruth who can't keep a secret if you tape her mouth shut, Ethan's old high school buddies, and a few neighbors who practically live for gossip. Then I called my cousin Matt. He's good with audio-visual setups. I told him I wanted to surprise everyone with a slideshow of family photos at dinner. Matt agreed to bring the projector and screen. No questions asked. What I didn't tell him was what the slideshow would actually be. The next step was subtle, and maybe a little cruel. I started giving Claire extra reasons to believe I was clueless. I'd come home early and announce it loudly so they had time to scramble. I'd accidentally leave my phone on the counter unlocked, so she could snoop if she wanted. I even bought her a necklace just because. Her guard dropped. She smiled more. She touched my arm in the kitchen like she used to. It was all an act, but it worked both ways. The week of Thanksgiving, I made a final, almost invisible move. I swapped the lamp camera's memory card for a fresh one, and left the old one in my office safe. That way, even if they suspected anything, they'd never find the real evidence. And then, I waited. Thanksgiving morning came cold and bright. The house smelled like roasting turkey and cinnamon. Claire was in the kitchen in an apron, laughing with her sister. Ethan was outside setting up tables in the yard for the overflow guests. If you'd walked in right then, you'd think we were the perfect family. That's exactly what I wanted them to think. By 4 o'clock, the house was full. People were everywhere. In the kitchen, in the living room, out back with drinks in hand. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. I made the rounds, shaking hands, topping off wine, thanking people for coming. Claire looked radiant. Ethan was charming as ever. And every time they smiled at me, I smiled back. Because I knew what was about to happen. Just before dinner, I tapped my cousin Matt on the shoulder. "Ready to set up?" I asked. He wheeled in the projector cart, chatting about how this was going to be a great surprise. We set the screen up against the far wall in the dining room, right where everyone could see it from the table. Claire glanced over. "What's this?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Just something I put together for everyone," I said. "Figured we could watch it before we eat." She smiled. "Oh, that's sweet." Once everyone was seated, I stood at the head of the table. I thanked them all for coming. Said how much it meant to have family and friends together again. Then I nodded to Matt. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. The first few images were exactly what everyone expected: photos of past Thanksgivings, summer barbecues, vacations at the lake. Laughter rippled around the table as people pointed and reminisced. Then the next slide appeared. Not a family photo. A still image from the lamp camera. Claire. Ethan. On our bed. The room went dead silent. I let it linger for 5 full seconds before the next clip began to play. And that's when the murmurs started. The murmurs spread like a ripple across the table. Forks paused mid-air. Eyes darted between the screen and me. Claire's sister leaned forward. Is that... I didn't say a word. I just let the footage roll. It wasn't obscene. I'd edited it carefully, enough to make the truth undeniable, without crossing the line into spectacle. A kiss. Hands where they shouldn't be. Whispers too intimate for siblings-in-law. The date and timestamp in the corner told its own story. Claire's face went pale. Her hand shot out, grabbing my arm. Daniel. Turn it off. I didn't move. My eyes stayed on the screen. Ethan half rose from his chair. What the hell is this? I looked at him for the first time all night. Evidence. The next slide came up. A still frame of the 2 wine glasses on our coffee table. Then another. The backyard camera catching Ethan's hand on her knee. Every image. Every clip. A nail in the coffin. Aunt Ruth gasped. Someone's fork clattered onto a plate. Matt, still holding the remote, looked from me to the screen and back, his jaw tight. I finally spoke. 22 years of marriage, I said quietly. 2 decades of family dinners, vacations, Christmas mornings. And while I was out working to keep this house standing, my wife and my own brother were making themselves comfortable in my bed. The silence was heavy. No one moved. Claire's voice broke. This isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. And you can save the rehearsed lines. I've been watching you for weeks. I've got copies of everything on a flash drive in the cloud, even mailed to my lawyer. I turned my gaze to Ethan. You were a kid when I took you in. I gave you a roof, food, second chance, and you repaid me by crawling into my marriage. His face flushed dark red. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I looked around the table. These 2 thought they'd keep this quiet. Thought I'd never know. But I figured Thanksgiving was the perfect time to let everyone see them for who they really are. Then I nodded to Matt. The screen went black. The lights came back on. I raised my glass. To family, I said flatly. And I drank. No one touched their food after that. Claire slipped out of her chair and fled to the kitchen. Ethan followed. Muffled voices, sharp and desperate, floated back into the dining room. I stayed where I was, talking quietly with whoever would meet my eye, letting them stew in the shame they'd cooked for themselves. I didn't need to scream. The room had done the work for me. By the time dessert was supposed to be served, most of the guests were gathering their coats. Claire came back in, eyes red, and started clearing plates without a word. Ethan avoided me completely. It would have been easy to stop there, to let the humiliation be the end. But this wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about making sure they couldn't crawl back from this. And for that, I still had one more move to make. That night, after everyone had gone, the house was silent. Claire was in the bedroom crying softly. Ethan had locked himself in the guest room. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, a pen, and a cup of coffee gone cold. Because humiliation was just step 1. Step 2 was removal. I'd already been meeting with a lawyer for 2 weeks. Quietly. Every lunch break, every spare hour, I'd been in his office with a flash drive in my pocket. He'd seen the footage, read my notes, and mapped out a clean exit. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but marital misconduct still counts when it comes to dividing property. Especially when you can prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. And thanks to the cameras, the timestamps, and my little Thanksgiving presentation, I had proof in triplicate. The next morning I slid a manila envelope across the breakfast table to Claire. Inside, the divorce petition, the evidence list, and a note from my lawyer explaining she had 72 hours to vacate the premises or face a court order. She read the first page, looked up at me with this hollow expression. After everything we've been through, you're just going to throw it away? I met her eyes. You threw it away, I'm just taking out the trash. She didn't say another word. Ethan got his own envelope, smaller but sharper. A formal eviction notice, signed and notarized. 60 days to leave. No exceptions. When he saw the return address on the envelope, his shoulders sagged. He knew it was over. The days that followed were quiet. Claire moved into her sister's apartment. Ethan crashed on a friend's couch. Word spread fast. Faster than I expected. Thanksgiving guests talked. Neighbors asked pointed questions. By the time Christmas rolled around, Claire's old friends stopped calling her back. Ethan lost a job offer after someone anonymously forwarded his would-be boss a link to the footage. I didn't have to ruin their lives. They did that themselves. I just showed the truth. The divorce finalized in record time. The house stayed in my name. Claire got none of the business, no share of the savings. Ethan got nothing but the clothes he walked out with. And me, I kept my head down. Went back to work. Cooked my own dinners. The silence in the house was strange at first. But it wasn't empty. It was clean. I don't tell this story to brag. I'm not proud of what happened, only of how I handled it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's not a fight. It's not a scene. It's the quiet removal of people who thought they could live in your life without respecting it. It's shutting the door and never opening it again. And that's exactly what I did. That's the end of it. I've said my piece. The rest is theirs to live with.